Modulation versus oscillation. An oscillation is a movement back and forth in a regular rhythm. An electronic oscillator takes the direct current, which is this stuff, and turns it into alternating current, this stuff. And a voltage-controlled oscillator uses voltage to control these oscillations. Now, when you connect a pair of loudspeakers to a voltage-controlled oscillator, they make a noise. Now, don't mistake this for being the so-called sound of the oscillator itself. The oscillator is simply controlling the speakers, and when you plug your speakers into this oscillator, it sounds like this. Now, I'm going to move this big voltage knob which controls the speed of the oscillations, which, again, when connected to the speakers, appears in our ears to alter what we call the pitch. The shape of this oscillation is also known as a waveform, and this smooth shape is called a sine wave. Now, by turning the shape knob, you can adjust the shape of the waveform to this spiky triangle wave. Now, by plugging this in, I'm going to get an external source to modulate, which means change the behavior of this oscillator. And this hole that I'm plugging this lead into means the external modulator is going to determine the pitch, the speed of the oscillation. And what am I going to use as an external modulator? Another oscillator. But if we connect this one to the speakers, you'll hear that, well, you can't hear it until you turn the voltage right up. This is because this is known as a low-frequency oscillator that oscillates stuff below what us mortals can hear, typically 20 Hz and down. But this LFO does venture higher into what we call audio rate oscillation. So if I connect this low-frequency oscillator, or LFO, to the voltage-controlled oscillator, you'll hear that we can sweep the pitch. You can determine how high and low it oscillates with this depth control and the shape of the waveform. But if we turn up the LFO, or low frequency oscillator, you'll hear that the changes in pitch become so rapid that it forms new pitches simply through modulation. The frequency of the modulation controls the pitch, otherwise known as frequency modulation or FM synthesis. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. It's not just oscillators that can modulate. Take this rimshot sample. So I'm going to duplicate the output so one stays as sound and one becomes voltage. Let's plug the rimshot into a filter. From this output, this hole here, the signal is unaffected. But from this output, you can chop off the top and control the resonance as you would expect with a filter. But if we introduce an external modulator, the voltage created by the sound of the rimshot itself, you'll see that the filter follows the shape or envelope of the sound. This is called envelope following, another form of modulation control. So in our first example, the source of the modulation was a low-frequency oscillator, the target was the pitch. And in the second example, the source was the envelope of the sound, the target, the filter.